This is Emission System Test 8 from Chapter 22, and we're talking about electronic throttle control. And I always have to go into this. Use of an electronic throttle control system allows the elimination of everything except what?
Accelerator pedal.
You got to have an accelerator pedal. You don't have to have a mechanical throttle cable. You don't have to have idle air control. You don't have to have a cruise control actuator. If you got electronic throttle control. Number 2, the throttle plate is spring loaded to hold the throttle slightly open at how far?
3 to 5.
Actually, believe it or not, it's 16 to 20%. Why would they do that? I mean, basically, when you turn on the key, that throttle is open 16 to 20%. That's almost a fifth. We want to have no-touch starting. You know, what's no-touch starting mean? That means you don't have to pat the gas. Whenever people had carburetors on cars, you'd have to tap the gas to wet the manifold and close the choke before you started one. But this one here is no-touch starting. And also, there's another reason is that they do that is so that the throttle plate won't stick in the bore. Now, on an electronic throttle control, if the throttle plate sticks in the bore, you're going to give it the gas, and it's not going to go anywhere. And you're going to give it a little more gas, and it's still not going to go anywhere. And all of a sudden, the throttle plate jumps out of the door, pops open, and then all of a sudden you took off.
That's what my car does.
Yeah. Now yours is actually feels like you're standing on a brick, and then it pops open. Am I talking about that?
I mean, it sticks.
Yeah.
I need to clean my throttle body out.
Yeah, that's all it is. I mean, the throttle body sticks, but it can stick on these just the same way too. Why does it stick? Anybody know when a throttle plate sticks like that?
I think you said before it was like carbon buildup or something.
Because of the PCV system. When you shut one off, you got all kinds of PCV steam coming up into the manifold, and it condenses and it turns into sludge, and it causes all kinds of issues, right? No. It can clog up EGR passage and everything else. The throttle plate actuator motor is what kind of electric motor? It's a DC motor. Nothing complicated about that. All right. Okay, I got these. I don't have this in a piece of paper in front of me now. I got them just up on the screen here. The actuator motor is controlled by the PCM through what kind of circuit? This is something you probably wouldn't know if you didn't actually specifically read the chapter of the book, but it's an H-bridge. H-bridge. Now remember, whenever you take your finals, everybody will have different questions on their test, and you better have a book to look these up, because you're going to have to. It's an open book. When does the PCM perform a self-test of the electronic throttle control system?
C.
Did you say what?
I said C.
Yeah, C makes sense. And they do. It does a lot of that. If vehicle, a lot of them got like Duramax diesels. Whenever you turn those on, the EGR, you know, is electronic, and it bumps it a little bit. You know, it moves it some on the newer ones. Okay, just to make sure it'll move. You know, and make sure it's not stuck, basically. Let's see. The throttle position sensor used in the throttle body assembly of an electronic throttle body control system is what kind? It's
I'm either going to say A or C.
B.
Actually B or C. 2 potentiometers that read in the opposite direction, and a Hall effect or a Hall effect sensor. And they want it to be redundant. You know, whenever you've got drive by wire, as far as your accelerate by wire. Somebody out there?
I mean, it might have been your work study student opening the door or something.
Yeah. But anyway, when you got the throttle operating by wire, you know, there's some things that have to be done. If you put redundant sensors on there that are going in opposite directions, and one of them fails, it's going to limit the amount of throttle you're able to give it. Now, that Ford 500 out there developed a problem with the throttle body control system. And what happened there was she would get a wrench light, and she would get like half throttle is all she'd have. I mean, it continued to do that, and it was throwing codes for the electronic throttle body control system. And she had an accident on that car a while back. Somebody ran into her, and it was fixed and all that. But what had happened was there was some wires down there that were chafing against metal. And so when those wires would chafe against metal, it would short out the signal coming from one of those potentiometers, and it caused the engine controller to get alarmed, you know, worried that it wasn't going to know what to do with the throttle and that it would do something wrong. And so it turned on her wrench light, and she'd only have about half throttle. Now that's kind of nasty if you're trying to get into traffic, you know. But it's a whole lot better to not be able to accelerate rapidly than it is to be accelerating rapidly when your foot's not on the gas. So that's what they went, they did on that. But another thing that was interesting about that was that, let's see, I lost my train of thought. I had something I was going to say about that. I'll tell you what it was. I had a scope that I was using. It was called a PDA, which doesn't mean personal digital assistant. It was basically like a $2,000 scope. They had a little liquid crystal screen, drew beautiful patterns and all this stuff, and that scope eventually died, and I couldn't get it repaired, and they quit making them and all that. But the point is, I hooked that scope up to those 3 potentiometers. She had actually 3 on that one, on that Ford 500. And as long as that potentiometer, the scope was hooked up to those potentiometers, that engine would not accelerate. I would get patterns on my screen, but it wouldn't accelerate because it detected something that was apparently partially shorting those signals away. But when I disconnected the scope from it, switched it off, restarted it, I got good. Sometimes whenever it seems like you ought to be able to do that, and it's a good idea occasionally to have an attenuator hooked up between there so that it doesn't cause a problem. Let's see where we got here. Here we are. A green wrench symbol is displayed on the dash. Actually, most of the wrench symbols I've seen have been orange, but let's go for it anyway. It means a fault in the electronic throttle control system on a Ford has been detected, and actually, like I say, the ones I've seen and the one on that Ford 500 are not green, they're orange, the ones I've seen. Same color as check engine light.
Honda?
Well, no, it's actually a Ford.
Oh.
Yeah, the answer they're saying is right, is that it's a Ford. Technician is checking the operation of the electronic throttle control system by depressing the accelerator pedal with the ignition in the run position. Now, how many of you remember what I told you about cleaning the throttle bodies on electronic throttle control equipped systems? Really important caveat when you're doing that. Like if it's just a plain old system, sometimes we want to push on the throttle plate with our finger, or maybe I always like to open it with a cable. But don't care what kind of vehicle it is, and this is just for your own, to protect you from making an error. Don't open that throttle plate with your finger. Because there's a friend of mine in his shop out there, and I don't even remember what kind of car he said it was on. He opened the throttle plate with his finger, and it never worked again. And that was like a $400 throttle body. See? So if you push that thing open with your finger and you destroy the throttle body, somebody's buying a throttle body. You got me? And if it was doing fine when it came in there, you were just cleaning the throttle. So how do you open it? You switch on the key, and you have your buddy stand on the gas pedal. Don't crank it up. When somebody says switch on the key or switch on the car, that doesn't mean start the engine, right? Make sure that you got good communication going back and forth, because I have had people do that. I'll say switch it off. Boom. And I'll say, okay, now switch it back on. They crank it back up. No. I didn't mean crank it back up. I mean just turn on the key, If you got your hand in the belts when they do that, it's a bad thing, right? And it'll go there. So make sure there's good communication flowing. Anyway, have your buddy or put a stick on the gas pedal and have it hold it open with a key on, and then you can clean the throttle body. You let it open the throttle plate. Don't you open it with your finger. That's to keep you from making a mess. That's a mistake somebody else has made that you can learn from. That's a good thing, isn't it?
You can't clean it with the car off?
You can, but you don't. You're not going to have the engine running. But no, when the key's not switched on, it's not going to move when and you don't need to move it by your hand. If you move it by your hand, something goes wrong in there on some cars.
I clean the throttle body with the car off, and I just moved I can touch it with my hand with the cable.
Yeah, that's okay. But we're talking electronic throttle bodies with the motor that's opening the plate. Like that one behind you down there. See that one back there?
Yeah.
See the one that's got the motor on the side of the throttle body? You can move the other one, the cable-driven one, with your hand.
Oh.
But the other one, those electronic throttle bodies, you don't move with your hand. That's what we're talking about, electronic throttle body. Let's see, basically, a technician is checking the operation of the throttle control system by depressing the accelerator pedal with ignition in the on run position, engine off. What's the most likely result if it's functioning correctly? The throttle goes to wide open when the accelerator is pressed all the way. The throttle will open partially, but not all the way. The throttle will perform a self-test by closing and then opening the default position. Now, I don't know what kind of system this guy is talking about here, But every one of these I've ever seen, if you look at that throttle plate with it switched on, engine on, key on, engine off, it follows the accelerator pedal perfectly. All right. Now this particular one has got a screwed up answer that says no throttle movement. And I don't like that answer. I don't think it's true. I don't even know why it's there. So in this particular case, if you want to get it right, put C, but that is not the right answer. The Sonata has got that on it. And we have that Crown Victoria is working on this morning. It's got electronic throttle body. And you can check it next time you get a chance. With the ignition off and the key out of the ignition, what should happen if a technician uses a screwdriver to push the throttle plate and attempt to open the valve? The throttle should move and spring back. See, I don't like doing that. I really don't like. What they're doing that for is to try to make sure that it's not stuck. Got me? The throttle body may be cleaned if recommended by the vehicle manufacturer if what conditions are occurring. Coast down stall, lower the normal idle speed, rough idle, any of the above. That's a D there. And then technician A says electronic throttle control uses a stepper motor. Technician B says an electronic throttle control uses spring-loaded, spring-loaded about 16 to 20% throttle opening.
B.
And yeah, that's going to be B. I don't know who that is.
What was 9 again?
A 9. 9, basically the throttle should move and then spring back to the home position when released. I don't like doing that though.
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I don't. Now I will tell you this. Let me give you a caveat on that. If you're looking in the shop manual on that particular car and it tells you to do it, then do it. You know what I mean? But if it doesn't give you specific instructions to move the throttle plate with a screwdriver, don't do it. I'm just not going to do it myself. Let's see. After servicing, and what's a stepper motor, by the way? Anybody know what a stepper motor is?
I don't remember.
All right, a stepper motor is something you need to understand. You probably have seen on some of these idle air controls, like on the car, the one y'all are working on out there. It's got a little round thing, and it's got 4 little wires going into it. Now, there's various different ways they work, but the ones that I was first acquainted with, there's 1 power, and there's 3 grounds that do this. And it actually turns a little armature. So, each time a ground happens, it's a step. It turns it part of the way, and it's got a nut in the middle of it. And it can run a little pedal in and out. And it can stop it anywhere it wants to.
So
See, it's not spring-loaded.
It's kind of it's similar to a step potentiometer, but it's a motor instead?
No, it's actually, this is an actuator, it's not an input, it's an output. But the computer knows how many steps by doing this. See, and if it wants it to go the other way, it does them the other way. And then basically that little thing turns. It doesn't turn all that fast. If you watch it, it'll go. It's basically spinning a little nut around a shaft and running it in and out. That's what it's doing. It's pretty cool how it works. But the Ford one over there that we got, like you see on that one, actually applies a certain number of current. The more current it applies, the more it pulls something against the spring. It's like a variable force solenoid for air, But they do it a different way. But you don't need that when you get electronic throttle control. After servicing the air filter on an ETC equipped vehicle, a technician has forgotten to connect the throttle motor wiring. What will happen if the vehicle is started?
B.
It's going to idle between 12 and 1600. It's going to be B. When the engine is turned on, a click noise is heard from under the hood of a vehicle equipped with ETC. Technician A says this is normal operation of the ETC self-test. Technician B says the TAC motor should move, not move. Throttle control motor should not move unless the engine is running, and we have already talked about that. Some technician A is the one that's right. It's normal. Identify the throttle position sensor assembly in this diagram. Is it A, B, C, or D?
What was 13?
13. That's technician A. It's normal. If you're gonna hear that thing move if you're listening really carefully. Some people have better ears than others, though. Which on that diagram that you see right there. Is it A, B, C, or D? Which one of those is the throttle position sensor?
I can't choose between A or C or D.
All right, what does it look like? Now, the E is the accelerator pedal position sensor.
So, yeah.
Okay, so C is actually the motor that opens the throttle plate.
B.
And so the throttle position sensor is always, typically, not always, but usually going to be on the opposite side of the throttle body from whatever it is that's opening the throttle plate. Sometimes it's made together, but in that particular case, say like on that one over there, sometimes you'll see them. Anyway, never mind. Number 15, which component in this photograph is the drive motor gear? Where's the drive motor? Figure it out. Look at the thing and tell me where the drive motor. Bingo. Good man. All right. In this diagram, which terminals are used for the throttle position sensors? That's number 16. That's kind of confusing looking, isn't it?
Easy.
1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 4, and 6. 3 and 5. 3, 5, 4, and 6.
Let's say B.
Now you see the sensors. See the arrows that look like they're sliding across those zigzags? Those arrows are connected to the changing signal line on the throttle position sensor. All right, the other one that goes with it, the companion that goes with that, can you figure it out? 1, 2, 4, and 6. Got it? You gonna remember that if you see the test on a question on a pop test? All right, number 17. Technician A says an electronic throttle control uses a stepper motor. Technician B says electronic throttle control uses a vacuum control stepper motor to keep the throttle at 16 to 20%. Both of those guys are yo-yos. They don't know. And number 18, all electronic throttle control systems includes the following components except what? They obviously don't need what? They're gonna have to have, you think they need an idle control switch? I don't think so. One time there was this guy that had a shop out in Newton or somewhere, and he came to the Ford dealership and he had a Tempo, and that Tempo had on the side of the throttle body a little DC motor, and on the tip of that DC motor was a little, it would touch the throttle plate, and that had a little contact switch in there, and there was 12 volts that had fed through a drop-in resistor to that idle speed control, which it was actually pushing the throttle plate. And when you gave it the gas and that throttle plate came off of there, it would actually close that and it would go to 0 volts because they had 4 wires. It had 2 wires driving the idle speed control and 2 wires for the idle tracking switch. And so what I found out, if you measured that idle tracking switch, it should have be a dead short to ground whenever there was nothing touching it, and it should be wide open whenever the throttle plate was touching the tip of it. And so whenever I would measure that and get 50 or 60 ohms and it would floating around, I would, you know, condemn that motor because that's always what was wrong with it. So he comes over there and he says, I need to know if you could help me figure out what's wrong with this because of the way it was idle and all that. So I said, I got my meter and I measured it. I says, well, you need an idle air control motor, or idle speed control motor, ISC they call it. And he says, my goodness, how much is that? And he says, I said, about $140, I think. He says, golly, can't we look somewhere else for the problem? And I said, well, let me ask you this. When you were working on ignition systems that had points in them, if you took a distributor cap off and the points were burnt up and it was running bad, did you put points in it or did you go somewhere else looking for another problem? Well, no, I'd put a set of points in it. And I said, well, you got to find what you know is wrong and fix that first. You know, I mean, I know you don't like going back and tell your customer they got to have a $140 part, but this one's no good. It's not going to do right until you do. Anyway, sometimes you just got to sing the blues. Isn't that right? Anybody ever give you a price you didn't like?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, what, hey, they did or they didn't?
Yeah.
Hey, what was it?
Like lemons for one. I didn't like that price.
That was that? What was
The
it?
coolant,
Yeah,
that was about $10 more than you said it was going to be.
yeah. Well, you shall not surely die. You know, at least you didn't have to pay labor.
Yeah. Well, I was the one doing it. So.
Yeah. But yeah, just leave it alone. Let it burn up. I tell you what, that Explorer that was in there needed coolant, but I mean, it was rusty and clogged and messed up and all that.
Yeah, I do know of one.
Well, you know what I do on mine? I change mine when the manufacturer says on all my vehicles. What? You start.
When my Buick died,
Uh-huh.
when I was living in St. Pete, and I found out that I was going to replace that VAT system module.
Yeah, in just a minute. Yeah.
Well, before I even knew that you could bypass it, Yeah, that was like, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000.
Yeah.
Might as well just buy another car. If that's
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that. Well, see, mine, both of my vehicles, my 07 Taurus and my F-150, they use Motorcraft Gold. And when I put mine in there, I mean, and of course, I make a work order, you know, just like I do in here, and I spent, you know, about $40-something for coolant on mine. I mean, it was more than I told myself. What should I do? Not do it next time? You get where I'm going with that? I mean, sometimes you do. I mean, it costs to keep cars going. You know, you can't expect to just drive them until they die. You know, well, you